Hi everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of March and the new moon that we have coming up in Aries on the 21st of the month. Now, this is an incredibly powerful period, second half of March, energetically and astrologically. And a big chunk of this is the Aries equinox. And this new moon I'm going to be talking about follows just a few hours after the Aries equinox. So rather than repeating everything I said in my conversation with David Farrell, I will put that link below because it's very detailed and comprehensive. And I talk a lot about the dwarf planets, the Kuiper Belt objects, and their relevance to the equinox as well in that. So that's a very important part, as I say, of this second half of March. So don't just think what I'm talking about today is all of the picture, because it isn't. So put that link below. So the fact that this new moon at 049 of Aries, and we'll look at the chart in a moment, follows just within a few hours of the equinox, strengthens the power of this new moon. And because it's in Aries, the very first sign of the zodiac, and it has 6 planets, if we include Eris and Chiron, that are also in Aries. You'll see in a moment, if we look at those as well, we have 6 orbiting bodies in Aries. That is an absolute powerhouse of warrior energy. Aries ruled by Mars in myth. Now, yes, it can be at its lower level of expression. This can express as being aggressive, or it's certainly very dynamic. It can be trigger happy because Mars is the ruler of Aries, and the sun and moon here at the new moon are square to Mars, that ruler, and Mars is technically out of bounds beyond the normal 23 degrees of latitude north or south of the ecliptic until early May. It has a slightly out of control, extreme quality to its expression. So this can bring up a very impulsive, trigger-happy expression of that Aries energy. We can see this playing out in the world really clearly, but it doesn't have to be that way. Remember that we, as the collective, are weaving these cosmic energies. We're weaving the tapestry. The astrology is not 100% of the picture. It's half of the picture, and we complete the picture by either expressing that collectively with a low level of expression of the archetypes, or a much higher level, because the higher level would be stepping into your courage, stepping into your bravery, your sovereignty, your autonomy, taking a risk, stepping out into new territory, being a pioneer. So see where Aries, particularly 0 of Aries, where this new moon falls in your own chart. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website. And then if you go to this link below, you can buy a 2-part video series that will take you from 0 to understanding where these points in every update I do fall in your chart and what the meaning is for you. And that will begin your astrological journey. But this can be a real, because of the strength of the Aries energy here, this can be a real surge forwards. And there's so many other indicators of this, of a whole new beginning in our lives in a really, really big way. So let me share my screen right now, and we can take a look at the chart. Now, as always, I set this up for the UK because this is where I live. So this new moon is happening at 22 minutes past 5 in the afternoon, UK time. If you don't live in the UK time zone, ignore the houses, ignore the clock face. Just look at the aspects between the charts and where the planets, between the planets rather, and where the planets fall. So this is the very strong Aries energy I've been talking about here. Now, sun and moon are always exactly conjunct at a new moon. So as I say, don't forget to set a new intention, to plant a new seed in your life for what you want to manifest going forwards. But if we include Mercury, Chiron, Jupiter, and Eris here, that is 6 orbiting bodies in Aries. That's immensely strong. And we can see here what I was just talking about, that the sun and moon are in an out of sign square to Mars. Mars is just going to be tipping into 0 of Cancer on the 25th of the month, just a few days later. And then Mars will be highlighted again, because any planets, this is true of your natal planets too, any planets that fall at 0 of the cardinal degrees, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, or within 2 degrees either way of that, so 28 of the mutables to 2 of the cardinals, is considered to be on the world axis, and therefore has the potential for public projection. For instance, my Mercury, my planet of communication, is at 1 degree of Aries. So what do? I speak and write publicly. Try and stop me. It has the potential for public projection out in the world. So see how that's operating in your life, because it's a wonderful thing if you have that. But even at this new moon, is this giving us such a fresh start. It's very strong initiatory energy to start a new project. But this is starting a whole new episode for humanity, actually. It's very powerful. So as well as the sun and moon being on 0 of Aries in my equinox video, I also mentioned that Manwe, the dwarf planet Manwe, is at 1 degree of Aries. That has a 283-year orbit. And Manwe in myth is part of the creation myth, with his wife Vada. We're going to talk about Vada in a moment. And they are really one of the many things I can say about them both. They operate beyond the dimensions of time and space, and they are dedicated to the triumph of light over dark. They are dedicated to the triumph of light over dark. So, one of the very important aspects here is that we have the sun and moon conjunct Neptune. It's an out of sign conjunction. Now, what that can suggest is that we may feel confused or overwhelmed by a lot of information coming in at us, particularly because the sun and moon and Neptune are, as I say, square to Mars. Mars is in Gemini. Gemini is the media, social media. It's a lot of information coming in at us. So we may feel confused or overwhelmed by the volume and the variety of information coming in at us. However, there's really a different message here, I think, which is about seeing through the veil. And the reason I say seeing through the veil is because the sun and moon are actually in a very tight semi-square to Uranus. And remember what I've been saying in recent videos, that any planet between 13 and 17 degrees of the fixed signs, 15 degrees is spot on, of the fixed signs is in a semi-square to 0 of the cardinals. This is quite advanced astrology. But nevertheless, this is very much highlighting Uranus. It's going to be highlighted further by something else I'm going to talk about in a moment. But Uranus is the planet linked to clarity, truth, and awakening. So the reason I feel that we are seeing through the veil, and we are going to have a ton of information coming at us, an absolute, crescendo of information coming at us, is that because that Uranus is so highlighted, truth, clarity, and awakening. We are going to see a massive wave of awakening at this time. So this is very, very powerful. Truth's coming to light. I live in the UK. If you live in the UK, you must be aware of this happening too. And this is now global. The other lovely thing that Neptune does in this out of sign conjunction is bring in a spiritual impulse into this new beginning. It brings in unconditional love. It brings in healing. We must move forwards with spirituality. And this is reinforced also by the fact that Venus, planet of love, is conjunct the North Node. And the North Node is our future collective destiny. Here is a really clear message that we must move forwards with love. Love for the earth, Taurus, and love for each other. Neptune is universal love. It's compassion for all beings. So this is very much part of this picture. We have to get beyond the division, the separation, and certainly the war impulse that is very, very clear in this chart. We've been going around that hamster wheel of war, death, poverty, and misery for thousands of years. This is a massive evolutionary opportunity to get beyond the hamster wheel, to up our game and start to live at a very different level. And that's what the equinox and also this new moon promise at this time. The other aspects which are very interesting here is that Mars in this square to Neptune, and I kind of hinted at this in the equinox conversation with David, this can suggest war at sea, Neptune, ill-judged war, because Neptune is when things aren't very clear, with that aggressive, out of control, out of bounds impulse that Mars has currently. So ill-judged aggression, some kind of deceitful aggression that the information we're getting isn't quite as it. And linked to that, this can be the illusory war. The illusory war. I'd like you to think about that. The other aspects which are very interesting here are that this new moon, this is so powerful, conjunct Manway, which I haven't written in here. They are in an out of sign sextile, a 60-degree aspect to Pluto, because Pluto in 2 days from here is about to tip into Aquarius. I'll talk about that in a moment. And then you can more clearly see it's a 60-degree aspect. On the other side, the sun and moon, the new moon, they are also in sextile to Sedna, out of sign sextile. Sedna is about to tip into Gemini in June. But nevertheless, these sextiles are already within orb. Now, both Sedna and Pluto, as I've talked about previously, both of the myths are very deeply linked to transformation. Whether you're thinking about Pluto and the myth of Persephone, where she was kidnapped and taken down to Hades, and it was all very dark and scary and crossed the Styx, but eventually came back up to the light, or whether you're thinking about the myth of Sedna, where Sedna was with her father in a canoe in a storm and her father threw her overboard, and then when she tried to climb back into the canoe, he chopped her fingers off and she and her fingers floated down to the deep icy waters of the Arctic and turned into beautiful sea creatures of turtles and whales and dolphins. So both of these myths are to do with profound transformation. And this is what we are going into in this whole period of time, that the equinox and the new moon in Aries really mark. This is the beginning of this huge surge forwards. The other thing which is important to point out, and I forgot to mention this in the equinox conversation, is that Vada, who is the wife of Manwë in the creation myth, is on the galactic center, the center of our galaxy, from which so much energy comes that we use to mold. You know, it's the energetic plasticine, if you like, the modeling clay with which we create our world. So both Vada and Manwë, as I just said, operate beyond the dimensions of time and space, and they are dedicated to the triumph of light over dark, as well as many other things. The other thing to point out here is that Pluto is beginning a T-square to the nodal axis. The south node is never drawn in, but it's always opposite the north node. So the south node is at 2 degrees of Scorpio, and already Pluto is square to that. In fact, once it tips into Aquarius in 2 days' time, you can see that more clearly. It stays in a T-square to the nodal axis until November this year, so pretty much the whole of the year. Now, what does that mean? I'll stop sharing my screen, I think, at this point. What does that mean? Well, if we go back to 1789, because I'm very familiar with that year because of the what happened with the peasants storming the Bastille, taking down the French monarchy. Monarch was executed, and that was the end of the monarchy in France. And from that point on, it was a republic. What Pluto's square to the nodal axis then was about was an absolutely fundamental transformation of society, socially and politically. Because from that point on, from the storming of the Bastille and the executing of the monarch, the tax laws changed gradually to benefit the ordinary people and reduce benefits to the very rich. The whole political system changed, so there was a greater shift of power to the people. And again, this didn't happen in a day, a month, a year. It was a gradual process. But even the move of Pluto moving into Aquarius is reinforcing this as a fundamental shift of social and political structure, because Capricorn, where Pluto has been since 2008, is very much the top-down structure of governments, corporations, institutions that favors elitism, very rich people at the top and poor people at the bottom. It favors inequality in all ways. The shift of Pluto into Aquarius, beginning in 2 days' time from this new moon, gives an impulse to a much more equitable and horizontally based society. Grassroots up, no longer top down. So say this won't happen in a day, a month, a year, because Pluto moves into Aquarius for 2.5 months till June. It then backs up again into the end of Capricorn until January 2024. It re-enters Aquarius until September 2024, does a final kind of big swing of the bulldozer, the wrecking ball, just for a couple of months into November, and then finally dives fully into Aquarius in 2024, December 2024, for 20 years. So through these next 2 years, 23, 24, we are going to see the increasing demolition of the old systems, the old world, the old order, particularly top down, and a gradual shift towards grassroots up, a more equitable society that will include financial status, tax. Will there be any tax? That's a big question. But certainly a much more equal society as we move forwards. And so that is where we're headed. Now, I have to do a whole separate video on Pluto in Aquarius, because there is 10 tons to say, which I'm not going to talk about in this video. But just very often, as Pluto shifts into a new sign, there can be a kind of extreme event or crisis around the archetype of that sign. For instance, when Pluto moved into Capricorn, which is to do also with big business and big banking, this happened in 2008. We're all aware of what happened in September 2008. There was a massive financial crash. It didn't happen as soon as Pluto moved into Capricorn. It happened a few months later, but nevertheless, that was a kind of signature event, because Pluto has stayed in Capricorn since that time. So with this shift into Aquarius, we could see in the coming weeks or months, certainly I expect an increase in solar flares, more extreme Earth events. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, so we could see more earthquakes, more volcanoes, that kind of thing, more extreme, unstable geomagnetics. We could see more galactic contact. Aquarius is linked to the galactic, the foreigner, the outsider. We could see more cyber attacks, more power outages. It's going to be a lot about skies, our skies, because Uranus in myth is the sky god that rules Aquarius. So as well as the galactics, we could see a lot happening around aviation. I think there could be quite a crisis with current forms of aviation and our current travel industry. I believe that will be transformed completely, and not too long from now, we're going to be using flying cars, and then ultimately, years down the road, we're going to be teleporting or even thinking ourselves there. Pluto's process is complex. Whenever it moves through a sign, it intensifies the nature of that sign, but at the same time reveals any corruption that is not for our highest good. So while it's been moving through Capricorn, it has really, particularly in the last 3 years, intensified the top-down power and control of those top-down organizations, governments, corporations, institutions, and at the same time is very much revealing any lack of integrity, transparency, accountability from those power structures. We can see this very clearly now, and it will continue over the next 2 years. As Pluto starts to move into Aquarius, science and technology will be accelerated. We could see many amazing new healing technologies. They are starting to emerge even now. We're going to see some incredible quantum jumps in those areas. But equally, Pluto will start to uncover any corruption in science and technology. Any corruption in science and technology. And that is, of course, for our highest good. So I was speaking recently, I believe it was to Heather Ensworth, actually. We did a wonderful, well, we thought it was wonderful, conversation about the future of astrology. And one of the areas we discussed was about the sort of dissolution of time, the dissolution of gravity. And as a result of that video, there's a wonderful astrologer called Sue Martin, and she wrote to me, she sent quite a long email about Sedna, and she has done some magnificent work, I have to say, in weaving the Gene Keys by Richard Rudd. You may be aware of this absolutely massive tome called the Gene Keys. And she has sort of woven the Gene Keys with astrology to give a very rich mix of meaning for people and for the world. And so she wrote to me about Sedna, but also about the current position of Pluto in the heavens. I'll put the link for her website below as well. And the current position of Pluto in its orbit right now relates to what's called the 60th Siddhi, Siddhi. And this quote is from Richard Rudd, who wrote the Gene Keys. And this, I just have to say this because it's so perfect for where we are at. The 60th Siddhi is an extremely rare Siddhi. When a being attains self-realization through the 60th Siddhi, something quite extraordinary happens. The fundamental laws that govern physical existence are loosened and in some cases broken altogether. At the collective generic level, this kind of event is called a frameshift mutation. I was electrified by those words. This kind of event is called a frameshift mutation. The 60th Siddhi breaks all our laws of reality, beginning with the laws of time and gravity. I thought that was the most incredibly profound quote. And it feeds into everything we're looking at with these jumps in incredible high frequency energy and light that are coming in very, very strongly around the equinox, around this new moon. They're going to be very strong around the eclipses that we're going into in April and May as well. And there is just such a sense of a massive evolutionary jump for humankind. No dress rehearsal. We've never ascended in physicality like this before, but go with it to create. Go with it to create. Find like-minded groups online or physically. Don't keep looking behind at the collapsing scenery. We've done that to death. Look forward to something much more beautiful, much more loving, much more heart-based. And we are the co-creators. We are the co-producers. We are the co-participants in this dance of evolution. I feel this so passionately. So I hope this has helped. It's just such a big time. And yes, our little individual energy bodies are being a bit battered by the speed at which we're ascending. You know, dizziness, aches and pains, tinnitus. I mean, the sleep disturbances. I've certainly, dropped out of the Dormouse finals. And very often I get 2 hours sleep a night. So many people are struggling with sleep right now because we are shedding the density of the old you and absorbing these light frequencies at a pace, particularly during our sleep. So see it as evidence of the jumps that you're making. Yeah, we are holding hands across the world as digital warriors to create new Earth. So God bless. I hope this has helped you. If you'd like more information about my books, my videos, my long monthly newsletter, just check out my website, pamgregory.com. And I'm going to be speaking to Kelly Hunter this week as well. And Kelly was one of the very earliest researchers into the Kuiper Belt objects, and she also electrified me in her research, and that has really enabled me to put the L plates on and start to dive deep into these dwarf planets, which are so exciting as the next octave of consciousness for us. So God bless. Thank you for listening. Hope this has helped, and I'll be talking to you again very soon. Bye for now.